I'd like to welcome everybody today to our program on this beautiful day. At least it's not feel like 20 below zero outside today, but welcome. And at this time, I'd like to do an invocation and pledge. Sally, I believe you're up for this week. If you are ready. Once you get yourself unmuted there.
Mr. President, I'm not ready. I'm sorry.
All right. All right, David, you set me up. That means you're up to bat.
Larry, David, won't you let me step in? You get to do this all the time.
Sure. I know Ken Rako is also available on the spot. You two can arm wrestle. Although you're already responding, why don't you go ahead and take it, Ken?
Okay.
Thank you. And Sally, my apologies. I should have sent out a reminder. My apologies.
This is a little Rotary invocation that I saw that I thought was pretty neat. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to just kind of recite it today as our opening invocation. I give thanks for the opportunity to be a Rotarian. Rotarians dig wells from which we will never drink. We vaccinate children we will never meet. We restore eyesight to those we will never see. We build housing we will never live in. We educate children we will never know. We plant trees that we will never sit under. We feed hungry people regardless of race or politics. For we know real happiness can only come by helping others. And for this opportunity, we give thanks. Amen. Let's recite now the Pledge of Allegiance. I've found a little flag that we'll be able to work from. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, Ken.
Sure.
I really enjoyed that prayer. Speaking of minutes from last week, was there any adjustments? I know that Linda found the year is incorrect. We still got 21 on it, just like I still got 21 on mine. I did fix it in my master last night, so I'm going to be ready next time. I've only looked at that. How many weeks now since we've been meeting since first of the year, and I still had 21 on it? After that, membership birthdays. Bob, got a happy birthday for you today, and Mary Griffin. Also, a birthday, membership anniversaries. Michael Loftus is 8 years. Jeffrey Rhodes Jr., 2 years. I got to admit, when I saw Jeffrey Rhodes and they only said 2 years, I was going like, wait a minute, that's not right. And I saw the junior on the end. They played catch up. Gave me caught off base. At this point, Chuck is out this week. He's traveling. So this time I'd like to welcome our guests. I know we have our two speakers, Ben and Emily, that we'll introduce at the beginning of the program. Do we have anyone else? I do not see
Mr. President.
Anyone. Yes.
Mr. President, I have Linda Johnson Lee coming again, but she had a class till 12:15, so she'll be joining up with us.
She's here.
Oh, there she is. Oh, she is there. Hi, Linda. Glad to have you.
Hello, Linda.
Again.
Welcome back. If there's no one else, we have Happy Bucks time. Anyone, if you raise your hand, and we'll just do the Happy Bucks. Pat?
I'm happy that my son moved to Connecticut a week ago, because if he had been moving this week, it would have been big trouble. So, and they're enjoying the snow in Connecticut. We'll see how long that lasts.
Great. Yep, you're kidding. Anyone else?
I didn't jump in quickly enough just a moment ago, but I do want to, of course, welcome back to our meeting David Bramley with us again, and looking forward to getting a membership application into your hands, David. So welcome. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Anyone else? I guess everyone's still half frozen from the weekend, I guess. I know I still am. All right, at this point then, Beverly, I'd like to turn the floor over to you to introduce our program speakers, and then they can go from there.
Well, I wasn't sure I'm going to do that. I thought Sally was, but I would be glad to. We have been involved with the Guatemalan Literacy Program for, I think, 3 years now. Ned, you can correct me if I'm wrong with that, but we've been donating and contributing, and Ned and I especially have been going back and forth a few times every year, just making sure that I'm updated, and then I share that with the International Committee. And I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful program. It did get that gold star rating that I think the 2 presidents back, or maybe 3, said this is a gold star global grant project. And so we did want to get involved with it. I especially think it's important right now. They're focusing on women, and maybe Emily can talk a little bit about that. I think that's very, very important. And also the challenges of them leaving their country and going elsewhere, even right here to the United States, because of the situation. And maybe you'll talk a little bit about that, the situation that they have, poverty and corruption and other things happening in Guatemala. And especially the women are hit hard, and the little girls with education hit hard with all of that. So it's my pleasure to introduce both Ned, and Ned's said that Emily has been involved with the program for a number of years, taking trips down there. And so, Ned, do you want to even introduce a little bit more about the program? And Emily, since I wasn't really prepared, I hope I did an adequate job for us today. Thank you. And thanks.
Sure, I'll be delighted. First of all, thank you to the Dunedin Club. You folks have been very active locally at home and internationally for years and years and years. And part of that, of course, is the spark that Bev and her team get, but she puts the energy into it so that you, as she said, do get the information, the follow-up, where your dollars go. And one of those projects is the Guatemala Literacy Project, which you've been very faithful in supporting. And I would encourage every club member to get very involved. You can get on the email list, so you'll get the updates. You can go down and tour down there, and that schedule fluctuates, of course, with COVID, but definitely that's a thought process. You can take your children and grandchildren down there. Most of our children are approaching Medicare age, but the grandchildren might be in the 10 up age group. And it's an amazing experience to do that. So this is one of the very few Rotary International service projects that individual club members and clubs can get very actively involved in. Bev even passed to me that it's one of the top 20 recognized by Rotary International as one of the top 20 international service clubs, period. As far as they're concerned, recently they gave that recognition to Guatemala Literacy Project. And Emily, our speaker, has been working with me for a number of years now because she coordinates all of the outreach programs, including seeing if we can help her out from time to time by giving the programs ourselves. But when we can't, it's Emily that steps in and does it. So she is a wonderful representative that you will thoroughly enjoy, and she will present the opportunity to become involved. So Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ned and Bev, for the introduction. I'm thrilled to be here to connect with you. And I'm glad that Ned said Dunedin, because I was pronouncing it incorrectly. So now I can catch myself. I was saying Dunedin. I'm thrilled to talk about the impact that your club has already made our project possible to establish that gold standard that President Ian Riseley, I believe he was 2018-19 RI president, so graciously said about our work in Guatemala when he was there in person. I have about a 15-minute presentation about why we do what we do, specifically addressing a lot of the struggles and barriers that people face in Guatemala that cause the level of poverty that we see. And then I'm going to talk about the initiatives that we've been able to implement over the last 2 years, specifically because of the pandemic, and how it has shifted how we typically do things, and how the funding from Rotarians like yourself has made that possible. So I'm really excited to talk about that. I love talking about what we do. And then I have an exciting opportunity too that I'll talk about at the end for a virtual trip to Guatemala, which you might all be interested in, until we can once again go serve in person, hopefully sooner than later. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Can someone turn on, Larry, can you turn on share screen when you get a chance? Yep, perfect. Okay, go. So today we are talking about the overall impact in Guatemala that the Guatemala Literacy Project has had through education. And so that'll cover a myriad of different programs that we offer, but the overall impact during COVID being the focus. And so I wanted to include just one of my favorite pictures from the last trip I was able to take, which was way back in 2019, which seems like a lifetime ago. Here we are outside of Antigua in Guatemala. So for Ned and anyone else that has traveled to Guatemala in person, one of the most beautiful places that I've ever had the privilege of traveling to. Has anyone else been to Guatemala? I see, oh, Linda, I see some hands. Yeah, of course. Beautiful, beautiful place. I'm from Appalachia, so the mountains are just, they remind me of home. Not the active volcanoes so much. There's a slightly active volcano here in the back. But I joined the team about 3 years ago, and I'm the marketing manager for Cooperative for Education, which is the parent organization of the GLP. And my background is in writing and specifically genocide studies. I've worked in nonprofit for several years. There's a small Holocaust museum in Cincinnati, which I worked at for some time, and then I worked in higher education. But I'm thrilled to do what I do with the GLP because I love that our mission is really about empowering people to have a different life, right? It's not about doing things for them. It's about giving them the tools to change their lives, hopefully forever. And in the course of working with this team, I actually became a Rotarian. I started presenting to Rotary clubs like yours and was asked, hey, why aren't you a Rotarian? It seems to align with your values. And so I joined an E-Club in District 5170, the E-Club of Silicon Valley, because that works for my travel. But I'm thrilled to be a member of this team and to talk about, again, why we do what we do. And then here's one other picture that I love from a trip to Guatemala. We're here delivering some gifts to one of our students, Shirley here. Is in our scholarship program, and her and her mother accepted these gifts when we went and visited and showed some potential donors what her life is like and how our programs have really changed Shirley's education and her family's life, hopefully forever. So here's a quick reminder of our international family, as we call it. The Guatemala Literacy Project is now one of the largest projects in Rotary history. This is our 25th year, actually. And we are thrilled to continue to grow. We've now worked with over 650 Rotary clubs, either through a global grant like your club does, or through other types of support like program sponsorships. And so we're thrilled to be able to work with all of these clubs to fight illiteracy across the country and begin to focus on other issues too, like girls' education, as Bev has mentioned. And so all of those clubs have come together to support these active programs across the country. In total, serving almost 250,000 students. So we were talking about NFL. I think that these almost 250,000 students could fill a Major League Baseball stadium over 5 times, which is pretty impressive. And we just want to keep going and raising that number and know that these programs are really making a lasting impact. And we talked about Ian Riseley, former RI president. Incoming RI President Jennifer Jones is a huge supporter of what we do, and we're thrilled to see her coming in as not only the first female president for Rotary International, but also a huge supporter of the Guatemala Literacy Project and an advocate that will truly be in our corner when it comes to boys and girls education in Guatemala. So a quick background on Guatemala before we jump into our program impact. Central American country, it's actually the most populous country in growth in Central America, about 17 million people, 40% of those being indigenous Guatemalans. And so typically, majority of those indigenous peoples are descendants from the Mayan civilization, some also Inca, that spreads up more into Mexico. But these indigenous populations are still very isolated and still very impoverished due to many factors. I said that Guatemala is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever had the privilege of traveling to. And I've studied abroad, I've traveled to lots of different places, and nowhere compares to the jungles, the mountains, the clouds, the land of the clouds, as it's called, and of course the people, who are some of the most giving people that I've ever met. The lush jungles, the soil is very nutrient rich from the volcanoes, which makes it great for farming when not in drought. And the biggest exports from Guatemala include coffee and clothing, mainly to the US, and even things like sugar, metals, and petroleum. So even though it is a very resource-rich country, the indigenous population doesn't really benefit from the resources within its own country. And so many of these indigenous peoples are stuck. They're truly stuck in a cycle of poverty because of lack of education and lack of opportunities in a system that doesn't really support them due to corrupt government and many other reasons. So here are two indigenous Maya women working as street vendors. They're selling the handmade cultural textiles that they've produced and are providing for their families. So rural Guatemala is the poorest and least educated place in the Western Hemisphere. This family here, as you can see, is living in complete poverty. 80% of the indigenous population live in poverty, and 90% of those poor kids will not graduate from high school. It's just not a path that they can really continue down on. And so our goal is to change that, not just to heal the families, but to heal things like the mass immigrations that we're seeing on the news. Even before the pandemic, we were seeing the masses of people flocking to Mexico and to the US border. Now with COVID-19, these migration rates are higher than ever, including unaccompanied children who are just trying to find somewhere to go. Maybe mom or dad is absent from the home or no longer living, and these kids are just trying to find opportunities, right? And I believe as a Rotarian, as a human being, that no one should have to migrate in order to survive, and especially when it's a child. I think that providing benefits in people's home countries and their communities and keeping the families together is an amazing side effect of the work that we do, because it offers those opportunities. So our goal is to make a lasting impact through education. We can look at really any country around the globe and see that a quality education changes the quality of life, career prospects, the overall health and dynamic of the family. And so adding our programs together over the last 25 years has really created a quality and sustainable plan for getting kids out of poverty and hopefully to graduation and beyond, which will break that cycle for these families. And so specifically, how has that changed in the pandemic, right? You know, all of our lives have changed in one or many ways since 2020. But our programs were very much well-oiled machines, as we'd say. And so we really had to pivot when school was suddenly virtual. What happens when the government says school's virtual, but most of your students don't even have electricity, let alone technology to go to school? What happens when you can't feed families because kids go to school to also get meals? And so we first started with people's basic needs. Like here, we partnered with other NGOs and local churches to deliver these food packs. And then we pivoted back to our core mission of education. So COVID-19 has devastated many countries, but in Guatemala, the economy is halted mainly due to the lack of funding from tourism, from lots of different industries that have been halted because of sickness. And so I wanted to share some exciting and positive things as opposed to the doom and gloom that we're really used to on the news now. I think we've become desensitized. So I'm thrilled to share one of my favorite initiatives that we did early in the pandemic was showing the kids that there's still bright lights, in this dark world. We encouraged the kids to set up spark reading corners, whether that was at school, if they were still able to go, or at home. And so we sent books home with the kids so that they could actually read and continue studying. But we had them put together or draw these adorable reading corners and take pictures so that they're still reading at home. Mom and dad are getting involved, and they're designating time each day to still study, to still read, and establish that foundation of literacy. Also, we truly focused on pivoting to more delivery programs. So we provide the children's books, but also textbooks. And we focused on going out into these isolated mountainous communities and delivering them in these blue tubs. I have hundreds and hundreds of photos of trucks loaded up with these blue tubs filled with books, with lesson plans, and our amazing team driving up the sides of mountains to get to these schools to deliver them to the teachers. So here's a happy team of teachers at a school in Keisha High, and my colleague Candy here helping deliver them and show how they can get them to the students and still keep instructing. We also pivoted a lot of our training seminars, which were once in person, to virtual. This was a huge undertaking because we didn't necessarily have the infrastructure for it yet, but our amazing team of skilled technological workers jumped into action and made sure that our future trainings still were held virtually, that the schools had the resources to make that happen, and then installing virtual platforms for all of these schools to access so that we could continue reaching them because things continued to change. We didn't know what was going to happen in the future. Here's one of our staffers, Lionel. He's here with a student in one of the computer centers that we installed right before the pandemic hit. And so he was one of our biggest assets to converting a lot of these training contents into a virtual format, just because he's so skilled in technology. Also, not just computers, but textbook trainings for our teachers, which we offer throughout the year, usually in large seminar formats in person. Those became virtual too. Or, as you can see here, socially distanced, where teachers could still come in and use their phones, use their computers to access the virtual platforms that we had installed to still host these educational resources. So here's a teacher, I believe this was in February of last year, at one of those trainings. And another exciting thing that we did at the end of last year is we created take-home lesson cards. They're called tarjetones or tarjetas, and you can see an example of a 3-page tarjetas where the kids get to take these home. They're laminated, and so they can be reused with a dry erase marker. And we're delivering these and shipping these around to different places to get curriculum into the home, to get the kids working with even their parents, if their parents are able to read, to truly ensure that the kids are not falling through the cracks and dropping out. So here's some deliveries to teachers at Chahalla. This is a school that I've been to before. You have to drive up switchback mountain roads to get to this school, and our team made it happen, which is really exciting. And here are some parents who maybe don't even have great reading skills themselves, helping their kids using these take-home study guides, which is really amazing and inspiring. I remember when we got these pictures, our team was just in tears because we were thrilled that it was actually working, and that parents that we were worried were going to become disengaged were not. They were still there for their students and valuing their education. And so one thing I really want to point out about our amazing team, we have about 50 staffers in Guatemala that work out of our San Lucas Center, and they are the ones who have made this happen, right? They truly put themselves last. They put service above self so that we could deliver things. They're putting themselves at risk because of the pandemic, but also going out into these isolated areas and making sure that our kids and our students and our teachers have what they need. And all of this was possible because of funding from clubs like yourself and from foundations that still made sure that the funding came through so that we could truly keep going, right? Keep these kids our priority. And we worked so hard throughout the pandemic that the Guatemalan Ministry of Education actually would come to us for advice, for resources, which I think truly says a lot from a government that deals with a lot of corruption, that the Ministry of Education is willing to learn and is open to relying on us because we've been doing it for 25 years. And so we've navigated a lot of challenges as a team, but I think we can all agree that our focus still remained the same, right? It was the students. And our mission is to break that cycle of poverty in Guatemala. And I really think that we've still made strides in the last 2 years, which were very difficult. And we hope to get kids to this point, to this photo, where they can walk across a graduation stage with a high school diploma and into a much brighter future. So I wanted to say thank you so much for your club's contribution to this. These are some students saying thank you. And I think that Dunedin Rotary Club and your members, you truly have helped us come this far. And I really hope to have your continued support for a global grant and maybe in other ways. And you really do embody the service above self mantra that we always say, and we actually want to see people doing. And you've proven that. So thank you so much. Thank you for letting us give this update. And I would love to open the floor to any questions that you might have.
I have one. Thank you very much, Emily. It's a wonderful presentation. What could have prepared you for this kind of work? And how long have you been doing it? Do you speak Spanish fluently?
I'm not fluent in Spanish yet, but I can get by. I like to say that I'm less than fluent, but more than conversational. I did study Spanish for 5 years, but it's kind of that use it or lose it situation. But when I do go to Guatemala, when you're immersed in a situation like that, it comes right back. I spent most of my childhood into adulthood doing service trips, traveling for service, whether with a church or with a nonprofit. So I think my parents instilled that in me. But I always knew that I wanted to work in nonprofit so that I had not that other jobs don't have a purpose, but having this shared mission with like-minded people truly makes your job a passion.
Also, just one more quick thing. Is there a Rotary Club there? Is there a Rotary Club nearby?
Yeah, there are about 30 Rotary Clubs across Guatemala. We have maybe 5 quality partnerships with 5 Rotary Clubs, but we're hoping to grow that number.
Thank you.
Emily, can you unshare your screen?
Yeah, I had
There
one more
you go.
picture I was going to share, but I can share it after. Yeah, Bev, I see your hand up.
Yes, because you've been around a long time with this program and it's been so effective. Have any of the students become either entrepreneurial in some kind of way that it has advanced the country, or become leaders in replacing some of those corrupt people in government?
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that's definitely a goal, right? Is that we're raising up the next few generations to make lasting change. I haven't seen anyone move up in government yet, but maybe we just need a little bit more time. I definitely think there are students that have that desire. We have seen many students go on to start their own companies, start their own nonprofits even. A lot of students that go into higher education and study accountancy or hospitality and tourism, because there's so many great opportunities across the country for that, including like agricultural engineering as well, trying to help grow these practices so that it's more sustainable for farming for these families, because many are farmers, but they don't own their own land. They rent at insane rates. And so seeing people really trying to create sustainable practices is exciting. And the fact that we're just a step on that path is even more exciting. So amazing stories that we'll be able to talk to some graduates from our program in that virtual event that's coming up in March. So that was one thing I'll share after questions, a formal invitation to the club to attend that.
Thank you, Emily.
Of course. Yeah, Pat.
Yes, my question has to do with tracking students and keeping up with not only, the end game, what happens after high school, but tracking them as they move through. And I understand with living in the mountains and, just getting there being difficult. I was just wondering what kind of system you have set up for doing that tracking.
That's a wonderful question, Pat. So it is difficult, but our team makes it look easy. We have dozens of local facilitators that are responsible for certain regions around our program areas in Guatemala. And so they're specifically before the pandemic, we're doing a lot more in-person wellness checks. They're going to their homes. They're seeing what the situation is like with their parents or with their siblings, because a lot of that goes unseen, right? But with the pandemic, we've relied a lot more on cell phones. And so you would think a lot of kids wouldn't be able to have a phone, right? But prepaid phones are super affordable there. And so a lot of kids will save up, or they'll get mom and dad's old prepaid phone, and we can still reach them that way. And then there's, of course, internet cafes, lots of places. And if the kids live within the proximity of our schools, we have like local networks that they can connect to as well. So the kids that we're close to, we get to in person as much as we can, masked, and then the ones not as much, we make sure that we have a phone number for someone.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let me see, I don't know who to go to next. Ronald.
Thank you, Emily, and thanks very much today for your really great presentation and for shining a light on this program. My question is, other than the government corruption, what is the political situation in Guatemala, and how does that impact your program?
Politics maybe don't directly impact our programs, but whoever comes into power, regardless of political party, definitely does. We hoped to see a lot of change with the last administration changeover, because the president that became in charge was actually a former doctor. But we didn't really see that become an asset during the pandemic. We were pretty saddened to see that there wasn't as much effort to reach the indigenous communities to educate them on safety precautions and on the vaccines being safe. I mean, they were 6 months behind the U.S. Or more for vaccine timeline. So I'm not an expert in that area, but I will say that the government just doesn't prioritize those rural indigenous communities regardless of political party. And that has to do a lot with the people that are in charge are not from those groups. They're typically in the more Spanish roots, people that are just not really prioritizing the Mayan communities. So we hope to see a change there, but any country that's been colonized, of course, has that power dynamic that's really hard to change.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Dick, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Do we teach some English in this program?
It's not in our curriculum, but a lot of the kids learn English on their own. They really want to practice their English on us. When we visit, Ned can speak to this too. With access to the internet, they love watching kids' YouTube videos or TV shows, and so they learn a lot of slang that way or through social media. So we don't really have any English embedded in the program, because Spanish a lot of times is the kids' second or third language. Since they're from indigenous communities, they oftentimes speak a language like Quiche or Mom. Those are the most spoken. But Mom and Dad usually don't speak much Spanish at all, so we focus on the Spanish literacy. Ned, is there anything you would add to that with your experience with the kids?
Do you have any statistics that show that a high school graduate does better economically eventually?
Yes, so I'll say our graduation rate in the poor regions is 10%. So 10% of kids are graduating. And so in our specific RISE program, the graduation rate is 80%, and 87% of them go on to get a job or study in higher education. Yeah.
Any other questions?
These all have been very pertinent. Thank you.
Thank you. David, do you have a question? Dave Kelly? No? Okay. All right. I think that's all our questions. Back to you, Larry.
Well, Larry, if I could add a little bit about District 6950. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
It's really exciting, Emily, to have you, because you really are in touch, closer touch, obviously, than I am with what's happening on the ground there, and particularly what happened in the last 2 years with COVID and how the response has affected it. you are recognized and your program is recognized. The Library of Congress has recognized the program for being one of the best literacy programs in the world. The Obama Foundation has recognized the program for bringing up young women and giving them the opportunity to be leaders in their community and in the world. The travel industry has recognized the Guatemala tour as the best cultural experience that you can take, any cultural experience. And here's one that's linked to Rotary and linked to literacy and linked to young people. I mean, wow. As Emily will close with an invitation to take a virtual tour in just a second. But District 6950, you have fellow clubs that are supporting Guatemala Literacy Project along with yourself. And you also have clubs and individuals that are sponsoring RISE students in their RISE Youth Development Program, which is primarily young women. And our district leadership has recognized that. And for example, this year's global grant has already gone in and will be reviewed by Rotary International in May. But so now what we're talking about is joining the next global grant. And if you're president-elect or president and you're remember to put in your budget for the upcoming, because our district recognizes that incoming international president Jennifer Jones is a longtime supporter. That picture you saw was her attending the graduation of one of the students she sponsored. And our district also wants to support clubs like my club and your club that are very actively supporting the Guatemala Literacy Project. So they have already pledged that in this coming year's budget, they will pledge $5,000 of District 6950 money. And that, of course, is matched at 80% by Rotary International. So we've got a huge head start there. And Troy, our incoming district governor, can, when he says hi to Jennifer, can say, oh, by the way, our clubs in our district are staunch supporters of the Rotary Guatemala Literacy Project. But I'd finish by saying it's an individual thing. I went and fell in love with it, obviously. But you have that opportunity too. Go do the virtual tour that Emily will present in a second, and then go down there yourself with yourself, your kids, your grandkids, but follow through the email process. This is one that you can really wrap yourself around and get your heart into, and it is well worth the expenditure of dollars and time and effort. Emily, on the virtual tour.
Yeah, Ned, thank you so much for sharing that. I think your perspective is really important. I wanted to officially invite you to this virtual tour in March. This is the first time that we're ever doing something like this because we've had to continuously postpone our trips to Guatemala, rightfully so, for safety and just logistics reasons. But we're offering a completely free virtual experience, which will much be like a kind of perspective on a bus going through Guatemala to hear the stories of our students and our teachers, completely free, like I said, at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. It's only about 90 minutes. And then afterwards, there's also an optional social hour where you can commune with other people who are new and familiar with the project. There's already several Rotarians that have signed up for it, and that might be one of them as well. But we're so excited to pivot again, to adapt, to still reach people and share this amazing project. And I think too, Ned touched on this, is that so many people have worked with the Guatemala Literacy Project over the years. And as Rotarians, we like to vet our projects that we support. And it is so exciting to have endorsements like Ian Riseley's, like Jennifer Jones, and these hundreds and hundreds of clubs that have given through our global grants to help make that vetting process easier for you where you want to put your Rotary dollars. And so last year, our global grant that Ned mentioned, we raised $568,000. And that's all going to purchase textbooks to provide computers. And so I'm learning more about it here at this fun event where you'll hear directly from students and graduates where they've ended up now. I would love for you to attend. So I'm going to drop the link to sign up for free in the chat. But again, I just want to thank you for letting us present about this project that we truly love.
Back to you, Larry.
Great, thank you. Very educational. It kind of gives you a different perspective. You just read about it in magazines or other things about it. When you actually get to talk with someone, even though we're connected virtually, it kind of puts a different spin on it, which I greatly enjoy myself. But we don't have any other questions, do we? If not, Pat, I'll turn it over to you now for present a book. You're still muted there. There you go. The book must have ran out of the room.
This is a book that I like. It says, I like helping people. What jobs are there? And I think that Emily is a perfect example of someone who likes helping people and has found a very good job to do that. And Emily, your name will be inscribed in the nameplate in this book, and they'll be given to an elementary school in Dunedin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Sally, I have next week's program. It's going to be the House of Beer. Because I can't about focus on quite have Andy speaking for the House of Beer via Pam. We'll be doing the introduction next week.
Right.
So we look forward to seeing that. At this point, I'd like to go into announcements. We still have the Peace Poll coming up next month, or now it's this month, excuse me. Please mark your calendar. I hope to see as many of you there as possible. Like I've mentioned in weeks past, we are the principal supporter of this project, so I hope we make a good showing. And be sure to ask your friends and neighbors to come because it is open to the public. The Rotary Park cleanup is scheduled February 6th. So please, Bob, if you want to get outside, hopefully in the sunshine, a beautiful day, come help us clean up Rotary Park.
Hey, Larry, can I jump into that?
Yes, please.
I have sent out the flyer, and I've heard back from about 5 or 6 of you all. It's going to be about an hour. It's not too much work. I'm going to be seeing Pam on Friday, picking up some trash bags, some pickers, and some gloves, and so we can clean up the park. It's not really very dirty, but it's nice to make an effort and we'll see if we can get all 3 clubs involved every 4 months. And we're going to be planning to go to lunch right afterwards. So if you are interested, I'm going to go ahead and send the flyer out again before this weekend, and just get back to me if you want to attend. It's going to be fun just to get together. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have the Tarpon Springs Rotary Club Raise Against Hunger meal packing event on February 12th. I know you have to sign up for that online. I do not know if they've got a full house or not yet. But I sent an email out here recently with the link to that. And if you have interest still and you have not signed up, let me know. And if you don't know where the email is, I'll resend it to you with the link so you can sign up for it. The grants committee, we're still accepting grants at the end of the month. So if you know any nonprofits in Dunedin that are looking for that we can help, maybe you might want to give a little nudge and put a bug in the ear that we are available and are accepting grants, so they'll be considered. Of course, there's no guarantees, but at least it can be considered at that point. Does anyone else have any other announcements? If not, we'll go into our 4-way test. The 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Number 1, is it the truth?
Truth.
Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And 4th, will it be beneficial to all concerned? With that, we are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you. Great presentation, Emily.
Thank you.
Great program.
Thanks.